A reading by Reverend Amba Wallace from an article in Integral Yoga magazine entitled Meditation and the Yoga Sutras. In this article, Reverend Jagannath Guerrera, Guruji, was interviewed by somebody from IYM, and the interviewer in this presentation is Annie Wallace, my daughter.
What do you mean by the subtle mechanics of meditation?
The subtle mechanics of meditation refers to movement, to flow. The essence of the Yoga Sutras is contained in Sutra 1.2, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Meditation is really about Nirodha. When Patanjali defines Nirodha, he talks about it as vahita, a calm flow, and not something rigid and static. If you look at the words dharna and dhyana, dharna has the root meaning of to hold something. There are several other meanings that have to do with bearing and conveying. So it's not just holding, but it also bears and conveys. The idea is that you are trying to cultivate a movement of mind towards something. And Patanjali says that something should be uplifting and something you like. The root of dhyana, D, is always related to reflection and spiritual ideas. Any kind of meditation, spiritual ideas, or thought. So we have this movement from dharna to dhyana. In dharna, you are cultivating a vehicle that takes you to an introspective state where spirit unfolds for you over time. So the subtle mechanics of meditation always involve movement. Meditation's not static.
Most people associate meditation with stillness, no movement at all.
I think one of the reasons people have difficulty with meditation is precisely because they have the idea that they have to restrict the attention rather than direct the attention. It could be kind of a subtle point, but in practice, it's a tremendous difference. If you think I have to bolt my awareness to the object of meditation, that creates a kind of closed space. It's hard to create movement and depth in your practice. I try to teach the idea of a focused, tranquil flow of attention without the mind wandering all over the place. So it's not holding or stopping the mind, but it's also not letting the mind run all over. It's a subtle feeling of not being restricted or bound, and at the same time, your attention isn't all over the place. It's more of a matter of the attitude that you bring. It's not whether it wanders or not, it's the attitude. With this approach, there's a dropping of the tension that you have to perform to achieve something. You want the mind to be in love with the object of meditation, so it will flow toward it and be absorbed by it.
How do you define and understand Nirodha?
One of the deeper meanings of Nirodha that you only get if you go below the surface is the root rud. Rud can mean to restrict or arrest, but it also means to avert. The ni, which comes in front, means down or into. So you put it together, and you get the idea of directing the flow of the mind down or into, or, in common language, going within. Patanjali talks about a state of mind, vyutana, which means externalization of the mind. It's the activity that the mind engages in on a daily basis to judge if something is appealing, beneficial, and will bring happiness. Is it worth our effort? You want to know the nature of something because you believe it's separate from the self. Then you judge by asking yourself, will I get happiness or satisfaction from this object or experience? The mind is constantly moving outward to find happiness that way. You could say that Nirodha is the polar opposite of vyutana. if you look at Nirodha as averting down into, it's the opposite of the mind going outward. We come back to the idea of the mind flowing, centrifugally out in Vyutana and centripetally in Nirodha. Patanjali, understanding that the mind is in the habit or has momentum of going out, says that every moment of Nirodha predisposes you to other moments of Nirodha. I envision it like a flywheel, with Nirodha acting like a centripetal flywheel. Every time you say a mantra, study a sutra, meditate, or do any yogic activity, it's like giving a push to the Nirodha flywheel. I believe that's why we hear the ancient texts say that every yogic action is never wasted. It means something you do is giving a push. So at some point in our lives, that movement will have more momentum or power than the internal moving flywheel. If you can fill your life with moments that give the inner flywheel a nudge, at some point it will gain prominence over the externally directed flywheel. It's at that point you are firmly rooted in the spiritual path. This momentum has reached critical mass.
What part does regularity in one's meditation practice play?
Patanjali gives guidelines for practice in Sutra 1.14. Practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended to for a long time, without break, and in all earnestness. If you do this, deep meditation will happen. It's the nature. Meditation will flow toward that samadhi. And the way to cultivate regularity is through falling in love with meditation. You know how teens, when they fall in love, stare in each other's eyes. It's not a practice. They don't force it. It's the same with your meditation practice. If you force it, that's like jumping around in a pool of water. It creates havoc in the mind. It can add so many layers, and a part of my mind will object to what's happening. That wasn't good enough. Why is my mind not cooperating? And so on. So there's judgment there, and because you feel that you're failing, you start exerting even more of an effort and wind up in a mess. You can't force the mind. It has to fall in love with the object of meditation. So you have to cultivate an environment wherein the overriding thought has to be, I know the benefits of what I'm doing. This is going to be great. Meditation should be something we love. It should be fun. And then everyone would get enlightened. The world needs a lot of easeful, peaceful, useful people. Whenever Gurudev was asked what the goal of yoga is, he would reply, to be easeful, peaceful, and thus useful. That's the single greatest definition of yoga on the planet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light.